In the shadows of the old streets, where every cracked brick held echoes of long-gone days, stood a house steeped in secrets, a house where once lived a family whose life ended in the most mysterious way, leaving behind exactly 100 years of silence. We speak of a case forever etched into the annals of Chinese criminology as the Dollhouse Case. Imagine early 20th century China, an era of change and contrasts. It was a time when ancient traditions still clung tightly to the earth, but the wind of new ideas already filled the sails. The city, where this tragedy unfolded, was lush with the green of ancient trees, their branches intertwining above the narrow streets, casting fanciful shadows on the stone-paved roads. In the shadows of these avenues, within one of the ancient houses, lived the family about whom this story will be told. It was a time when wealth and status often predetermined a person's fate. The family in question belonged to high society. They were respected, influential, and appeared happy. The head of the family, a respected gentleman, was a successful entrepreneur, widely admired. His wife, a beautiful lady, radiated charm and elegance, captivating everyone. They were raising children, heirs, the future of their family. Their life seemed destined to unfold over many decades, but fate had a terrible surprise in store for them. One cold, damp day, when the fog crept through the streets like a ghost, the servants arrived at the house. They were to prepare the residence for the owner's return, but the door was locked. After several futile attempts to get inside, they called the police. And what they saw upon entering would be forever etched in their memories. Inside, the house looked like a set from a gruesome play. Everything was perfectly clean, as if meticulously prepared before an important performance. The furniture remained in place, jewels rested in their boxes, and silver gleamed in the buffet. Time seemed to have frozen, suspended on the brink of something dreadful, but the most horrifying sight was the bodies. The family members lay as gruesome dolls, discovered in unnatural poses. It was as if some merciless hand had arranged them like figures on a chessboard, foreshadowing the deadly outcome of the game. An expression of absolute peace was frozen on their faces, as if death had overtaken them swiftly and painlessly, like a dream. There was not a single sign of struggle, nor the slightest trace of violence, if one discounted the fact of their death itself. The doors of the house were locked from within, with no signs of forced entry, no indications of intrusion. It all looked like a mystification, a meticulously staged spectacle directed by an invisible director. How could such a thing have happened? Who was this unseen director, holding the fates of all these people in his hands? And most agonizingly, why? This question, like a serpent, sank its fangs into the minds of the investigators and ordinary citizens, unleashing a turbulent sea of speculation and gossip. The police began their investigation, but immediately encountered a whole mountain of insurmountable obstacles. The absence of any clues, a hazy motive, silent witnesses, all this made the case nearly unsolvable. Interrogations of the few servants yielded absolutely nothing. The people were frightened to death, disoriented, and completely unable to help the investigation, as if they had vanished into thin air. In those times, criminalistics in China was only taking its first tentative steps. There were no modern methods of analysis, no extensive databases, and of course, not a shred of experience in investigating such unprecedented crimes. The investigators worked as if in complete darkness. By trial and error, desperately trying to find some thread in this impenetrable labyrinth of riddles. One of the first theories that took hold in their minds was revenge. Perhaps someone in the family had enemies. But who exactly? And what could possibly motivate these people to murder the entire family? Investigators considered robbery as a possibility, but the money and jewelry remained untouched, as if the criminals had no financial motives. Suicide was another hypothesis, but it didn't align with what was before their eyes. The positions of the bodies seemed unnatural, and the perfect order prevailing in the house spoke of something else entirely. Investigators meticulously examined the family's life, hoping to find any clue. The homeowner was a successful entrepreneur, a respected man, but, as it turned out, not without secrets. His business involved supplying goods from overseas, and sometimes delicate issues arose in his affairs. Rumors swirled of financial misdeeds, of envious rivals plotting his downfall. His wife, a woman of exceptional beauty and intellect, shone in high society. She effortlessly navigated the atmosphere of lavish receptions, engaging in lively conversations with influential individuals. But secrets lay beneath that dazzling veneer. Often, in private talks with her friends, she lamented the ailments that plagued her, the agonizing headaches. Perhaps events had occurred in her life, foreshadowing the approaching tragedy. The children, as was expected in a respectable family, received an excellent education, attending music and painting lessons. Nothing suggested trouble in this seemingly perfect life. However, the investigation reached a complete dead end. No evidence, no clear motives, not a single witness. The case was classified, and all materials were carefully hidden from prying eyes. Years, decades passed. 20, 30, 40. But the mystery hidden behind the walls of the dollhouse remained unsolved. The case became entangled in a web of legends, rumors, and the most incredible conjectures. Some whispered about an ancient curse, a heavy burden hanging over the family. Others insisted that ghosts had settled within the walls of the old mansion, thirsting for revenge for the sins of long-gone ancestors. Still others saw a cunning conspiracy in the events, involving influential individuals vested with power. Years went by, and when it seemed that the secret would forever swallow what had happened, when even the most desperate skeptics stopped hoping for a revelation, new astonishing information surfaced. From dusty, forgotten archives, new documents and testimonies were retrieved, holding the answers. New witnesses were also found, people whose age had long passed 70, but in whose memories the events of those distant days were still vivid. They remembered everything, from the smallest details to the most terrifying nightmares, and were prepared to share their memories. One such witness was an old servant who had worked in the house for many years, right up to that fateful day. She recounted how, not long before her death, the lady of the house began to act strangely, unsettlingly so. She often locked herself in her room for whole days, refusing food, and at night, when silence fell over the house, she could be heard weeping, sobbing uncontrollably, as if her soul was being torn apart by unbearable pain. The servant also noticed that strange individuals, behaving very suspiciously, began to appear in the house. Another witness, a former police officer, revealed that during the investigation, they had discovered mysterious letters addressed to the lady of the house herself. In these messages, steeped in dark premonitions, there were threats and hints of certain secrets that she apparently was meant to uncover. But as it turned out later, these letters were removed from the case files and classified. This new information ignited a spark of hope in the hearts of the investigators for solving the case. They began searching for new leads, meticulously analyzing old evidence, as if trying to piece together a puzzle broken into many parts. One version that particularly grabbed the investigators' attention revolved around narcotics. In the early 20th century, opium was widespread in China, and many people suffered from addiction. Could it be that someone in the family had a dependency, leading to this tragic outcome? The investigators began to delve deeper, but soon faced new, even more complex difficulties. No evidence of drug use was found in the house. Doctors examining the bodies revealed no signs of poisoning. Yet, the investigation continued, stubbornly clinging to the fading thread of truth. The investigators broadened their search, began analyzing data and comparing facts, hoping to find even the slightest clue. And then, after many years, like a ray of hope in the utter darkness, a new detail emerged. During meticulous work with archival documents, the investigators stumbled upon information about a strange medicine that the lady of the house had been taking shortly before her death. This mysterious potion, it seemed, had been crafted from unknown herbs and possessed a powerful psychotropic effect. Could this be the reason for the tragedy? Investigators began to meticulously examine the traces of this medicine, attempting to understand who made it, who sold it, and who took it. And then, after some time, they found a lead. It turned out that the healing potion was made by a local herbalist, whose fame resounded throughout the area due to his extraordinary methods of healing. He was known for his passion for experimentation and the use of the most exotic ingredients in his potions. The investigators traced this healer, but alas, by that time, he had already departed this world. However, detailed records were found in his dwelling, in which he meticulously described his experiments. And among these yellowed sheets, descriptions of that very medicine, which the owner of the house had taken, were found. From these records, it followed that the potion was composed of poisonous herbs, capable of causing hallucinations and loss of consciousness. Perhaps the unfortunate woman simply took too much of the medication, leading to the tragic end. But that didn't explain the deaths of the other family members. Why had they also passed away? What truly happened within that ill-fated house on that fateful day? The investigators continued their meticulous work, and then, after some time, a new clue emerged. It was discovered that the homeowner had a forbidden relationship. Her lover was a young man, much younger than herself, whose youth only emphasized the depth of their controversial bond. The investigators found a pile of letters, scribbled in a trembling hand, in which they poured out their feelings to each other. In those lines, they confessed their passionate love, cherishing dreams of a shared future that seemed impossible without mutual consent. But their relationship was shrouded in secrecy, as if by a dark veil, fearing exposure and condemnation. Could it have been this very fear, bone-chilling and profound, of their union being exposed that led to such tragic consequences? The investigators began a meticulous examination of the mistress of the house's lover. He was revealed to be a young man from an influential family, his name well known within certain circles. Whispers spoke of his cruelty and recklessness, his ability to relentlessly pursue his objectives. Rumors circulated that he was prone to violence, and his name had appeared repeatedly in cases involving law violations. The investigators leaned towards the theory that the mistress's lover might have been involved in her demise and also in the deaths of the other family members. Perhaps he had decided to eliminate anyone who knew of their relationship, to cover his tracks, to search for evidence, confirming the lovers' involvement in these terrible events commenced. Witnesses were found who claimed to have seen him near the house on that fateful day. Clues emerged, pointing to his possible presence in the house at the time of the murders. However, the evidence was insufficient. There was no direct proof, irrefutably pointing to his guilt. The man vehemently denied any involvement, and the investigators lacked solid grounds for his arrest. The investigators were at a dead end. The case was complex and convoluted, and a clear picture of what had occurred eluded them. They had no idea who had taken the lives of this family, why the tragedy had happened, or how to find the truth. But they refused to give up. They continued to work tirelessly, meticulously analyzing every piece of information, seeking new, seemingly insignificant clues. And then, after long years, fortune smiled upon them. They discovered a new piece of evidence. The investigators stumbled upon a record in the archive, which revealed that a certain treasure was hidden in the ill-fated house where the family lived. It was believed this treasure belonged to an ancient clan, closely tied to the family. Perhaps it was the thirst for this wealth that drove the killer to commit such a terrible crime. The investigators doubled their efforts, searching for clues to the treasure, trying to understand who sought it and who might have benefited from the deaths of innocent people. And then, after several weeks, they caught a break. It turned out that an influential person, part of the family's social circle, was seeking the treasure. He was known for his cruelty and lack of principles, and it seemed he had absolutely nothing to lose. This very trait made many suspect him. Could he be the killer? The investigators began meticulously gathering evidence, striving to prove his involvement in the horrific crime. They managed to find witnesses who claimed to have seen him near the house on that fateful day. They uncovered indirect evidence, hinting at his possible presence in the house at the time of the crime. However, this data proved insufficient. There was no direct proof of this man's guilt. He vehemently denied any involvement, and the investigation stalled. There were no grounds for arrest. The investigators found themselves at a dead end once more. The case seemed incredibly complex and convoluted, like a tangled ball of yarn where it was impossible to find the loose ends. A clear picture of what had happened still remained elusive. They knew neither the killer's name, nor the reasons behind the brutal act, nor even how to find the truth. But they refused to give up. Years passed, and they continued to work, meticulously analyzing bits of information, seeking out new, barely noticeable clues. And so, after many long years, they managed to make another crucial discovery, one that might have brought them closer to the solution. The investigators uncovered information about the existence of an extensive network of underground passages within the house where the murdered family had lived. These passages led to various parts of the city, seemingly offering boundless opportunities, from secret meetings to hiding something. Could the killer have used them to stealthily enter the house and cover up their monstrous crime? The investigators began a thorough study of these subterranean labyrinths, trying to understand who had access to them, who might have known of their existence. And after some time, they managed to grasp a thread of truth. It turned out that the underground passages were actively used by smugglers involved in illegal trade. Perhaps smuggling was the reason for the murder? This thought led the investigators to carefully examine everything that could point to the involvement of the smugglers in the tragedy. They started by questioning witnesses. Some whispered they'd seen suspicious individuals near the house on that fateful day. Then came the painstaking search for clues. Several items were discovered, possibly suggesting the smugglers had indeed been in the house at the time of the murder. But these clues proved insufficient. There was no direct evidence, irrefutably proving the smugglers' guilt. The suspects themselves vehemently denied any involvement. Despite all efforts, the investigation lacked sufficient grounds for their arrest. The investigators found themselves at a dead end once more. The case seemed complex and tangled, like a ball of yarn with no visible ends. They had no idea who committed this brutal murder, for what reason it occurred, or how to find the truth in this grim affair. But they didn't give up, gritting their teeth and believing in victory. Tirelessly, they continued to work, meticulously analyzing every scrap of information, searching for new leads, like hunters tracking their prey. And then, after long years of relentless work, they managed to make a breakthrough, achieving the most important discovery. The investigators located a witness, an elderly woman, who on that fateful day had seen a large, cumbersome box being carried out of the house. She couldn't say what was inside, but clearly remembered that the box was incredibly heavy, barely manageable for one person. Intrigued, the investigators began searching for this mysterious box, wondering what secrets it held within, and trying to understand who the person was who had carried it out. And then, after some time, their efforts were rewarded. The box was found. It turned out that inside were piles of money and glittering jewels, dazzling with their brilliance. But the most valuable treasure in this box was the letters, carefully folded and tied with a ribbon. These were letters written by the homeowner to her lover, confirming their secret affair and plans for escape, for a life together, far from everyone. Investigators concluded that the bloody drama within the house's walls was connected to a tangled love triangle. The homeowner, weary of marriage, decided to flee, hoping to begin a new life. However, her lover desperately clung to her, unwilling to share her with anyone. Obsessed with this notion, he committed a monstrous crime, taking the lives of the entire family to conceal their affair and seize her fortune. After carefully gathering all the evidence, investigators charged the lover. He was arrested and brought before the court. The court, having heard the arguments of the prosecution and the defense, delivered a harsh sentence, finding him guilty of murder and sentencing him to death. Thus, after 100 years, the mystery surrounding the dollhouse was revealed. But this story became more than just a victory for justice. It was a triumph of human will over time, the triumph of truth over a cunning lie, a tribute to memory, wrested from the clutches of oblivion. The case of the dollhouse, a tragic tale, revealing how passion, betrayal, and the thirst for wealth can lead to the most horrifying consequences. This case is yet another reminder that secrets, like rotten fruit, eventually fall from the tree and are exposed. Behind every crime are individuals, their experiences, their fears, and the lingering embers of hope. The case of the dollhouse is a heartbreaking story about those who lived in darkness, carefully concealing their secrets, only to be consumed by them. This drama once shook China and still evokes strong emotions, prompting reflection even now. Just imagine this chilling cocktail of feelings: fear, burning shame and utter despair experienced by a woman caught in a trap of her own desires, and her betrayed husband with a ruined life and a destroyed family, and their children whose lives were cut short before they could truly begin. Even now, after 100 years, the case of the Dollhouse continues to captivate people's minds. It reminds us that the truth will always find its way to the light, that the past never completely disappears, and that a secret hidden for a century will inevitably be revealed. So, what remained in the end? The family was destroyed, their dreams shattered, and their lives ended in the cruelest way. As for the murderer, he received his just punishment, but alas, it didn't bring back the lives of the deceased. This case is a heavy reminder that even in the most prosperous families, terrible secrets can lie hidden. It shows how complex and contradictory human nature is, and that evil can hide under a mask of well-being, like a predator in ambush. It reminds us of the fragility of human life, the importance of justice, and that the memory of crime victims must live forever, reminding us of the tragedy endured. But who was to blame for these terrible events? Was it the lover whose passion turned to madness? The ruthless smugglers whose greed knew no bounds? Or was there someone else lurking in the shadows whose name will forever remain a mystery? The answer to that question is no longer important. What matters is this: the case of the Dollhouse will forever remain in the annals of Chinese history as one of the most mysterious and tragic investigations, and the victims' names will be eternally etched in memory. And perhaps, within the walls of the old house where this family once lived, a quiet whisper can still be heard, echoing in the dim light, reminding everyone of the tragedy that occurred 100 years ago. A whisper that makes one ponder the eternal: nothing is forgotten, no one is forgotten.